in the world, and somehow thought that would be the end of the story. No farewell moment. No dramatic reaction. No headlines of outrage coming from her side. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels almost uncomfortable when the entire world is waiting for you to say something. Because when Caitlin Clark didn't make that roster, it wasn't just a basketball decision. It felt personal to millions of people watching. Fans argued. Analysts debated. Social media exploded for weeks trying to explain how the most talked about player in the sport suddenly didn't fit into the plan. And the strangest part? She didn't fight it. No interviews calling it unfair. No emotional posts. No visible frustration. While everyone else was busy reacting, she was doing something much quieter and much more dangerous. She was paying attention. Every comment, every doubt, every explanation that tried to box her into something smaller than what she actually was. She let all of it sit. Not to respond, but to remember. Because players like her don't waste energy proving people wrong in the moment. They wait. They build. And when the moment finally comes back around, they don't just respond. They make sure no one ever asks the same question again. And that's exactly where this story starts to shift in a way nobody was ready for. At first, they tried to make it sound simple. A basketball decision. A matter of fit. A question of timing. That was the official explanation when Caitlin Clark was left off the 2024 Olympic roster. On the surface, it almost made sense. Team USA was stacked with veterans. Proven names. Players who had already been through international pressure and came out with gold. But the more people looked at it, the less it added up. This wasn't just a promising rookie being eased in slowly. This was the most watched player in women's basketball. The one filling arenas. The one pulling record-breaking viewership numbers. The one defenses were already terrified of before she even stepped onto a pro court. And somehow, she wasn't needed? That's when the conversation shifted from logic to something much more uncomfortable. Because suddenly, it wasn't just about who made the team. It was about what the team was saying, without ever saying it out loud. Questions started building. Was it really about experience? Or was it about control? About hierarchy? About not wanting to disrupt something that had already been established? Meanwhile, the team went to Paris, and didn't look untouchable. They still had talent. No one's denying that. But there were moments where the offense stalled. Moments where creativity was missing. Moments where the game felt tighter than it should have been for a roster that dominant on paper. And every time that happened, the same thought crept back into people's minds. What would this look like if she was out there? That question didn't go away. It got louder. Because while Team USA was trying to prove they didn't need her, the world was starting to feel like they might have made a mistake. And the most dangerous part. She was watching all of it unfold, without saying a single word. Here's where most stories usually take a predictable turn. A player gets overlooked, and the reaction becomes the headline. Frustration leaks out. Subtle shots in interviews. Body language shifts. You start to feel the tension every time they step on the court. But that never happened with Caitlin Clark. If anything, she got quieter. Not invisible, just focused in a way that made everything else around her feel like background noise. While the media kept replaying the decision, she moved on like it had already been filed away in her mind. And that's what made it different. Because she didn't ignore the moment, she absorbed it. Every doubt that questioned whether she was ready. Every take that suggested she needed more time. Every conversation that tried to place limits on what she could do at the highest level. None of it triggered a reaction, but none of it was forgotten either. Instead, it showed up in how she played. With the Indiana Fever, you could see the shift happening in real time. The game slowed down for her. The reads got sharper. The passes got more precise. It wasn't just talent anymore. It was control. She wasn't trying to prove she belonged. She was starting to look like someone the game had to adjust to. And that's a completely different kind of pressure. Because when a player reaches that level, the conversation changes. It's no longer about whether they fit into a system. It's about whether the system can survive without them. Behind the scenes, expectations were building again. Not the loud, chaotic kind from before, but something heavier. Something quieter. The kind that sits in the background and waits for the right moment to surface. And eventually, that moment came. Not with an announcement. Not with a dramatic reveal. Just a roster. A tournament. And one name that nobody could ignore anymore. She didn't walk into the spotlight. She stepped into it quietly, from the bench. No dramatic introduction. No, this is her moment, build up. Just another substitution in a game filled with stars. Names people already trusted. Players who had already earned their place. And then the ball found Caitlin Clark. That's when everything changed. Because within seconds, literally seconds, you could feel the shift. Not loud, not chaotic, just controlled, intentional. Like someone adjusting the tempo of the entire game without needing to force anything. First touch, she brings the ball up, scans, waits. That pause mattered. Most players in that moment rush. They try to make something happen immediately, especially when they know all eyes are on them. But she didn't. She let the defense move first. Let the space open. Then delivered a pass so clean, so perfectly timed, it looked routine. Easy assist. No celebration. Just execution. And somehow that made it louder. Because it didn't feel like a player trying to prove something. It felt like a player reminding everyone what they already knew. A few possessions later, it happened again. Different setup. Same patience. The ball swings back to her on the perimeter. No hesitation this time. Just one smooth motion into a deep three. Net. No reaction. No extra movement. Just a quick turn and back on defense like it was expected. And that's the part people couldn't ignore. There was no adjustment period. No hesitation. No sign that the moment was too big. If anything, it looked like the moment had been waiting for her. Not the other way around. And suddenly, that bench role didn't feel like a storyline anymore. It started to feel like a limitation. Because every minute she was on the floor, the game made more sense. The spacing looked cleaner. The decisions came faster. Teammates moved with more confidence, like they knew the ball would find them exactly when it needed to. She wasn't forcing the offense. She was organizing it. And once that started to become obvious, the real problem for everyone else began to surface. Because scoring wasn't even the most dangerous part of her game. Scoring gets the highlights. But what Caitlin Clark was doing out there, that went deeper than points. Because the moment she settled into the flow of the game, it became obvious. This wasn't about how many shots she could hit. It was about how many decisions she could control. Every possession started to feel like it was running through her. Even when it technically wasn't. She'd bring the ball up, and before anything even happened, the defense was already reacting. Not to what she was doing, but to what she might do. That's a different level of pressure. The kind that bends a defense before the play even begins. Run a pick and roll against her, and there was no clean answer. Drop coverage. She'd take one step back and launch from a distance most players wouldn't even consider. Step up too aggressively? She'd slip past it and force the help defense to collapse. Switch. Now you've got a mismatch somewhere, and she already knows where it is before you do. It wasn't just execution. It was anticipation. And that's where things started opening up for everyone else on the floor. Kelsey Plum suddenly had space she didn't have before. Catch-and-shoot opportunities that felt almost too easy. One quick read from Clark, and the ball was already in Plum's hands before the defense could recover. Then came the connection with Rhyne Howard. Same pattern. Different side of the floor. Clark draws attention, shifts defenders just enough, and fires a cross-court pass that lands exactly where it needs to be. No adjustment required. Just catch and shoot. It kept happening. Not because the defense wasn't trying, but because they were always one step behind the decision she had already made. And the scary part? She wasn't overplaying it. No forcing. No chasing stats. No unnecessary risks. Everything felt measured. Like she was choosing the exact moment to break the defense instead of constantly attacking it. Even in transition, where most players speed up, she slowed things down just enough to stay in control. 3-on-2 fast breaks turned into easy points, not because of athleticism, but because of timing. She'd wait that extra half second, just long enough for the defender to commit, and then deliver the pass. Simple on the surface, almost impossible to stop. At that point, it wasn't about whether she could take over a game. She already was, just not in the way most people expected. And that's when another storyline, the one people couldn't stop talking about for months, started to fall apart right in front of everyone. By the end of it, the numbers told one story. Efficient scoring, high-level playmaking, wins across the board. But what Caitlin Clark did in this tournament, that went way beyond a stat sheet. Because context changes everything. She wasn't playing 35 minutes a night. She wasn't handed full control from the start. She wasn't even in the role most people believed she deserved. And still, she became the most impactful player on the floor. 5 games, 5 wins. Tournament MVP. Coming off the bench. Let that sit for a second. Because it's one thing to dominate when everything is built around you. It's another to step into a system that didn't revolve around you, and quietly become the center of it anyway. That's what made this different. Every minute she played, the game tilted. Not dramatically, not in a way that screamed for attention, but consistently. Possession after possession, decision after decision, the flow kept shifting in her direction. And teams started running into the same problem over and over again. Give her space? She pulls up and hits from deep. Close out too hard. She's already past you. Collapse the defense. The ball is gone, and someone else is wide open. There wasn't a clean answer. And the more teams tried to adjust, the more it exposed the same reality. They weren't dictating the game anymore. She was. But maybe the most important part of this entire run had nothing to do with offense. It was the image. Her and Angel Reese running actions together. Her and Paige Buchers exchanging control without hesitation. The bench reacting, celebrating, locked in. Everything people thought would divide this team ended up making it stronger. And that says something bigger than basketball. Because for months, the conversation around her was loud, messy, and constant. Opinions everywhere. Debates that never seemed to end. But in this moment, none of that mattered. No narratives. No debates. No explanations needed. Just results. And if you've been watching this whole shift happen in real time, you already know, this doesn't feel like the peak. It feels like the beginning of something. So if you're seeing it too, if you're watching how this is unfolding and realizing where it might be headed, this is probably the kind of story you don't want to miss as it keeps evolving. Because what comes next? That's where things usually get even more interesting. They tried to make it about a decision, a roster choice, a timing issue, a question of readiness. But what Caitlin Clark just did turned it into something else entirely. Because this wasn't about getting left off a team anymore. It was about what happens after that moment. Most players would have chased validation, tried to prove something immediately, forced their way back into the conversation. She didn't. She waited. She improved. And when the opportunity came back around, she didn't just step into it. She controlled it in a way that made everything before feel almost irrelevant. That's the difference. Great players respond. But the ones who change the game, they make the original doubt look outdated. And that's exactly what this run did. It didn't erase the questions. It made them feel unnecessary. Because now, the conversation isn't, does she belong? It's something much bigger. How do you stop a player who can control pace, space, and decision-making at this level, without forcing mistakes that never seem to come? How do you build against someone who doesn't just play the game, but reads it faster than everyone else on the floor? And more importantly, what happens when she gets full control? Because if this is what it looks like in limited minutes, in a reduced role, under constant pressure, then what happens when there are no limits left? That's the part no one has an answer for yet. And that's why this story isn't even close to finished. So if you've made it this far, you already see what's building here. And trust me, the next chapter is only going to get bigger. Make sure you like the video, drop your take in the comments, especially where you think she ranks right now, and subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, because when the next moment hits,